Okay, so welcome everyone. I am Kathleen McMahon, and I'm here today to show how you can roll out a product rebrand in secret using feature flags. Before we begin, let's get some details out of the way. Let's make sure my clicker works. It does. First, I want to give a huge thank you to Omar, Amen, the speakers, the event production crew, the volunteers, and everyone that's worked so hard to create this amazing and excellent event. Isn't this awesome? I mean, look at this production value. My presentation will be posted probably tomorrow because I'm jet lagged, y'all. It'll be posted on Noticed after the event. That's https://noti.st/resource11. Take a breath. Comma, after my talk period. You can follow me at Resource11 on Twitter, Instagram, and GitHub. And let's back up a sec so I can introduce myself a little bit better. So I am an engineer and a designer, and I like to speak about things. And sometimes I race cyclocross very badly. If anyone here in Belgium might know about cycling a little bit. Mostly when I do, you'll see me in costume racing 2 laps to your 6 in, yes, at the back of the pack on a single speed bike, wearing my costumes backwards so you can see me and, laugh. And I'll always have a bunch of onlookers laughing at me, toasting at me with their beverages, usually a beer. Now, I think y'all agree these past few years have been a bit intense, right? So, see that penguin in the middle of the screen? Not that one. That one. That was me, burning out, surviving COVID layoffs. I was laid off right at the beginning of COVID. That was awesome. Doing tech interviews, so you're basically perpetually studying for finals. Getting new jobs, dealing with the isolation of lockdown, burning out again. And so what I did to survive were a few things like spending my time getting crafty with lighting setups during the colder months, taking photos of my cats, Thor and Otis. As this photo shows, they're snuggling together. They clearly fight a lot. It's a problem. And there you go. I saw that. Okay. And in the summer, I go to the beaches at different times, different days, different locations. The sound's not working, but it's okay. You can imagine the sound of the surf. It is awesome. Imagine the ocean right now, okay? Always at low tide, which is the best time to look for sand dollars. And right now, I am saying it's a baby. That is a sand dollar. It's like the Where's Waldo of the ocean. And that's what they look like. And so I have a serious collection of sand dollars, and I photograph my treasures every time. It's very soothing. But trying to do this at home, photograph this at home, is a problem because of the Otis factor. Because Otis is especially needy. See, during lockdown, before burnout hit its peak, I also started a heck of a crystal collection. And I attempted to get good photos, but Otis was having none of that. None of it. None of it. So my attempts at this, which, by the way, this will be another design system talk about my sand dollar design system, because that is a component library there, y'all. Nope. And now he's even taught Thor to do the same. Thor is very satisfied. But who could resist Otis? And he's the reason why I made the intro video that BEJS shared out on Twitter. He wanted to be here really badly. And so here's Otis attending by proxy. Anyhow, when it was time to head here to see people in person, I felt so excited. People, finally people. And then I remembered, oh my God, talking to people. How many of you felt the same? My introvert did a little panic. But excitement won up, and now I've just shaken off my stage fright. So thank you for your patience. Oh, I got sparkles. You gave me sparkle lights. But you're here to learn about secret rebrands. So I'm going to tell you a story about that. Currently, I'm working at Northwestern Mutual as a senior design systems engineer. And I'm helping them take the Luna design system to the next level. But before that, I was working at LaunchDarkly on the UX Next team. And this story is about my time there. And the UX Next team at LaunchDarkly enabled other designers, this is like the official term, they enabled other designers and engineers to craft high-quality experiences for their customers. So that's a mouthful. That's what they did. Cool. So when I first joined LaunchDarkly, part of their work included maturing their design system. And I'm a super fan of design systems. So I was super excited. And if you've ever worked in a design system, you know there is a lot of things to consider, which can sometimes feel like herding kittens. A lot of fun, but a lot of moving parts. So similar to herding kittens, maturing a great design system can be tough. And if your squad is small and you don't have a dedicated design system team, you have to be very strategic and choose what you are going to tackle. So in our case, the foundations were missing from our system. And we had a component library, but we had none of the building blocks in our system. So we began our journey to define our building blocks for our system. Like design tokens, which I love design tokens. Anyway, naturally, we were just beginning our work on defining our tokens when, in an unexpected twist, someone kicked in the door wearing a Big Bird costume. Not really. The creative team entered the scene and announced a brand refresh. So there we were, presented with an updated brand North Star. You may ask, what is a brand North Star, Kathleen? Well, there is this article by M81 Creative that gives a good explanation of what a North Star is. Your brand's North Star is the promise that you are making to your customers. And at LaunchDarkly, their North Star aligns with their core message. Software powers the world. LaunchDarkly empowers all teams to deliver and control their software. LaunchDarkly leans into their mission with their colors, typography, and that really fancy signature logo with that thing on the right. They call it the Osmo, so it goes just to the right. They're like, we're leading you into the future. They're very fancy about it. Now, creating a brand North Star takes time to do right. You have to do things like strategy, competitive analysis, user and customer insights, and creative explorations. And this process can take many months, sometimes up to a year, if you want to do it right. And once that's done, you will have outputs like logos and colors and visual branding and all these visual assets. So once that North Star is established, it's time for the teams to go to work to roll those branding visuals into the marketing site and the product site. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So while our team was informed about the brand refresh at the earliest possible moment, we had one wrinkle, and it was a big one. The time to the rebrand rollout to the customers was 13 weeks. And it was a secret project for most of the company. And that meant the time to the internal rollout to our teams was 10 weeks. So we had to carefully pivot, figure out how to get things done, since typically visual refreshes happen more often on the marketing side, because you can just roll it out, right? And visual refreshes happen less often on the product app side because a rebrand impacts established product roadmaps. And that's where you have to be careful, because when the visuals between your marketing site and your product app get out of sync, there's an issue. Because first, your product app will start looking outdated. And second, outdated app visuals breaks your brand promise. And people are wondering, do you know what you're doing here? So click. Our team regrouped and thought, this is Mars Baby Cat, and I love Mars Baby Cat. Our team regrouped and thought, how can we get this done? And how do we do this without making any questionable decisions that may impact the product? Because you don't want to be making questionable decisions like, I don't know, making dishes like that include jello and shellfish. It's just not a good look. But then we had an idea. Why not use our own product to roll out a rebrand? Let's use feature flags. That means that we could set up a flagging structure and rebrand in stealth mode. Cats, y'all. We could make all of our changes alongside other teams, not disrupt the other squads' roadmaps, all while the other squads were not aware that the product brand refresh was actually happening. You may be asking, what is a feature flag anyway? By the way, I did get that question asked at another presentation, so I put this slide in. Because I didn't know before I worked at LaunchDarkly what the heck a feature flag was. So there's this article on the Atlassian site by Ian Buchanan about feature flags, and it says, feature flags, also commonly known as feature toggles, is a software engineering technique that turns selective functionality on and off during runtime without deploying new code. So that's for anyone out there who doesn't know. I'm sure everyone knows, but that's for anyone who doesn't know. But in JavaScript, it basically looks something like this. It's a fancy if statement. If something is true, run a function. Deploy this code. So in our case, what do we use feature flags for? We used three types of flags: Boolean flags, prerequisite flags, and multivariate flags. And we use them to control things like theming, data attributes, fonts, design tokens, HTML templates, and UI updates. And since we had to do it all in 10 weeks, in secret, we used this one ring flag as the basis of most of our changes. And the flag that all of our changes were dependent upon was the Enable 2021 rebrand flag. Now, we probably should have named it something different, because anyone in our company probably could have looked up, anything that said rebrand, probably could have looked it up and turned it on. We could have said Enable Larry. That would have helped, but, So, secret rebrand. So most everyone didn't know, but a few people knew. Anyhow, still working? Still working. Oh well. Anyway, this flag was a prerequisite for other flags. And why this is great is prerequisite flags are great for testing out additional features in isolation. So what this means is you could have all these subflags for the prerequisite flags, and unless the prerequisite flag was on, the other flags wouldn't work. So this means you could test individual features in isolation, and you wouldn't impact the rest of the app unless that Uber rebrand toggle was on. So it was really amazing, because you could just be toggling all these little features on and off and just playing around with stuff. And then if you just turned on the big rebrand one, everyone would be like, oh, you just flip this one big flag on at the end. They're like, oh, magic. You're like, yeah, hey, cool. So it was pretty nice. Anyway, because secret projects, we could target our stakeholders, and for our prerequisite flags, we could target who could see which of, in our flag structure, we could target their stakeholders to view our work and continue to work on our different, items that we wanted to change, like theming support using data attributes. And this is how we would control whichever theme we wanted to serve up. For example, let me go back to level check if I'm because I'm starting to wander and I want to make sure I'm on time. Go back. Okay. So once this flag was on, we could continue working on theming support using data attributes to control whichever theme we wanted to serve up, and using font families in our visual refresh, and we could enable font. I think I'm missing some slides, but I'm just going to keep rolling with it. We added the enable enter flag with the, I'm going to keep going because I'm worried that I just lost some things here. But so anyway, we have the rebrand flag, we have an enable enter flag, and this is also under a subflag of the prerequisite flag, and this allows us to serve up a different font and test out a new font for our visual refresh, because we wanted to test out a new font family. And this is pretty great because then we could add a data attribute for data enter, and that way we have the theme for Osmo, which is our new theme. We'd have a theme for legacy, so we could flip between the old theme, the new theme, and then we could also independently test out the new font for reasons, and it's for performance reasons. I'll show you that later. And so we could test all three of these out independently. It's pretty cool. Then we could pair these data attribute values with React context, and this is how, and with hooks, and create a theme context. And we would use this theme context and a theme provider that we could use anywhere that we needed in our app. And we created our own use theme function and leveraged our use theme provider in the app entry point and leveraged our rebrand flag value to set the theme. So basically, that function is 2021 rebrand enabled. That was a context value that we had for our flag. So if our flag was turned on, we'd serve up Osmo, which is the new theme. Otherwise, we'd serve up the legacy theme in context. And then we pass that theme into the provider. This is also the same thing for is enter enabled. We'd serve up the font if we wanted to. And then we'd use useEffects hooks to set data attributes at the root element of our app. And then now that we had app theming scaffolded, we could work on our design tokens, because before this whole thing was revealed to us, we were working on design tokens. And we had to adjust all our tokens work to, rather than building all these foundations, we had to pivot and figure out how can we get this done without losing any of our progress. And now we couldn't do any work in Style Dictionary, which is a nice CLI tool that allows us to automate any of our tokens work. So we had to do a lot of stuff by hand. We're like, all right, how are we going to do this? So if you've never heard of design tokens, this person named Sanka Road tweeted a great definition of design tokens. It's design tokens are an abstraction for everything impacting the visual design of an application or platform. In other words, design tokens are design decisions propagated through a system. So we had to do a lot of exploration work to figure out how to do this, because design tokens span 3 categories: base tokens, which are the raw values; semantic tokens, which are aliases to your base values; and component tokens, which are scoped at the component level. And when we began, our legacy token system was a blend of base and semantic tokens, which wasn't necessarily a good mix because it wasn't scalable because of the naming conventions that were already used. They had things like, with this blended base and semantic token naming system, they had color names blended in with the names, and that didn't make sense because what if your primary color name changed? You couldn't scale that. So we were trying to refactor this. But since we had a 10-week time frame, we're like, how are we going to do this? And this was happening at the application level, so we couldn't scale at the base level. We couldn't scale at the semantic level. And all these tokens were like being filtered all the way through at the application level. And that's the thing we had to think about right now. It's like everyone was just using tokens everywhere. It's like, how do we just tackle that now first? So we're like, all right, this is what we need to tackle. So to do that, we decided to, again, use data attributes. So what we decided to do is use the data attributes to map our application level tokens to base tokens, to raw values, using the data theme data attribute, either whether it's the legacy or Osmo theme, wherever we had the data theme equals Osmo or legacy. So whenever that was set in our root, our HTML root attribute, whichever data theme equals Osmo or legacy, we would serve up in CSS. We would alias our different CSS variables to the different base variable token levels. So this is how we could do it. If you notice here, when it was Osmo, instead of primary color green safe, we could change it to the new color of color blue 100 because the whole color scheme had changed from greens to blues. And so we could do this where the same color of primary color was one name, and then we could change the new value under the hood, and it would be zero impact for the teams that were consuming the tokens. And they would have no change. They wouldn't have to change anything under the, at their level, and we could do everything underneath. And so we could do this one-to-one mapping by toggling on our flag. So this is especially helpful because we could introduce a new set of semantic tokens quickly without much fuss. So we could have a separate set of base tokens and create a new set of application level tokens and change the values by, see here, there's the original set for root, and then with Osmo, you change the right side, the completely new set of colors. And by leveraging those data attributes, you could test out the new token values by flipping that toggle on at runtime. And the teams wouldn't see the color changes. We would see it because we were only targeting the flag to us. So it's pretty nice. And we could also remap the tokens for our font families, test and adjust the values quickly. So also for the interfamily, if we had that data interfamily is true, we would change the I don't know what's going on there. It's like Otis is like here. I don't know. But the font families over there is it's basically like adjusting what kind of fonts we want to have there, and it overrides things. Don't get my ADHD stuff going, man. I have 6 minutes left. I will be on time. All right. So we can also set up some component tokens. Why are we having the disco over here? So we can set up some component tokens and also streamline our CSS. Because what's really great about this is we could have this data attribute like this, have our CSS, alias it to new colors, and then when we are ready so we have the root one, right? Have our new button tokens, and then have a new block with, set to Osmo, and when we're ready to have a new theme, we just rip off the whole block of the old legacy tokens, and we could rip out a whole block of code. So we're not hunting and pecking for CSS, blocks of CSS to, it's just better to maintain your code, which is really nice. Anyway, we can quickly remove blocks of code later on. We also use flags and other ways for performance optimizations. In our HTML templates, for example, we use the LaunchDarkly Go SDK and Go templates. Oh, they're driving me bananas. On the back end, to bootstrap our data, our flag data, I think you're having a good time back there, into our HTML templates. This will give us just enough information to render our pages. And we would use our rebrand feature flag to set the data theme attribute as a performance optimization. This way, we could have the HTML templates check for this flag and render the correct theme while we wait for the JavaScript to load and initialize the HTML. And avoid, it's not the flash of unstyled content, this is a flash of incorrectly styled content. So we'll just render the right theme right away. We also use and this is all another performance enhancement here. We also use that enable interflag for the font to preload, because our inter font was a variable font. And we used this flag value to preload the variable font only if this flag was on. This way, our app performance wouldn't take a hit from loading any unnecessary fonts if the flag was off. For UI updates, we use feature flags to control a left nav. For example, if our rebrand flag was off, the legacy theme would be true, and we'd show icons on the left nav while we worked on our new left nav in secret. And our top nav, there wasn't a top nav in the legacy UI, but there is one in the new UI. So we could use the top bar spike flag as a sub flag and work on that in isolation. And so we could add that by turning on the top bar spike flag. So it's kind of nice. It's another thing with flags. Pretty cool. I have 3 minutes left. I can do this. But since this flag was dependent on the rebrand flag, we could test that in isolation. Also, when you create a new environment in Launch Darkly, you get a production and test environment. And the little chiclets on the left, those are the 2 default colors you get. But we wanted to test out 2 brand new environment colors. So we made this rebrand environment colors flag and used blocks of JSON. So we could test out color combinations on the fly. So we could do a couple variations and test those out. And then we could just edit the JSON and try out new colors and see if we liked them. So that was pretty nice to do, like a JSON variation. And then we could use Go to store those values if we liked them. Lastly, favicons. It's always nice to have your favicons ready to go when you roll out your rebrand rather than scrambling to update at the last minute, especially if you're using them in more than one environment. So say you have 3 environments and you want to have different favicons for your production, your test, and your dev environment. And you want to have fancy colored favicons. You can do that here, and you could have a multivariate flag. And so you could have strings in your variations and serve up a different, SVG or PNG, depending on what you need in your HTML template. So that was a lot, and I think I made it within the time. So with the power of feature flags in a 10-week time frame and a little bit of disco, we implemented a substantial amount of changes to a product app, and a little sip of water. Oh, I'm so thirsty. And rolled out a product rebrand in stealth mode. So I figure if we can do it, so can you. Thank you.